Howdy Space Cats, it's little old me, and it will soon be bonfire night, in fact a week today. Many of you lovely people are watching from elsewhere around the world while I am floating about on an island just off the south coast of England. Each year on November the 5th we have bonfire night, a celebration, remembering of the gunpowder plot and Guy Fawkes. It's traditional for towns and villages to build massive bonfires and have fireworks and baked potatoes to eat. In reality, we don't all live in villages and towns, but in my imagination, we do. We also have to make sure that no hedgehogs have taken up residency for the winter season in amongst all these massive piles of wood. And we give all dogs, cats, horses, sheep, Bluetooth headphones to listen to nice music through so they don't have to hear the noise. Stop babbling, Mariner. Pick up a pencil and get to work. Yes, ma'am. I don't normally draw in pencil straight onto the watercolour paper just because at some point I'm going to need to rub those lines out and it might damage the paper. But this time I just thought, why not? So here I am, just putting in some lines, black lines, and that you can see the pencil marks are still there. And then I had to rub all of those lines out once the pen line was really, really thoroughly dried. I'm working in wet on wet here, so that means that the texture of the watercolour paint is going to take on some really interesting shapes. In some areas you'll see that I just use wet paint onto dry paper. The story of the gunpowder plot is as follows. In 1605 there was a failed assassination against King James I by a group of English Catholics headed up by not Guy Fawkes but Robert Catesby, who sought a change in England after decades of religious persecution against the Catholics. The plan was to blow up the House of Lords during the state opening of Parliament on the 5th of November 1605. The state opening means that the King or the Queen of the time will come and open Parliament. Guy Fawkes, a fellow conspirator, had 10 years military experience and was to be in charge of the explosives, where to place them and how to set them off. All was going tickety-boo for the gunpowder plot gang until an anonymous letter was put into the hands of William Parker, the 4th Baron of Monteagle, at the end of October. He passed it on, and during a search of the House of Lords on the evening of the 4th of November, Guy Fawkes was discovered guarding 36 barrels of gunpowder, enough to blow the House of Lords to smithereens. What are smithereens, you ask? Well, it's what would have been left of the House of Lords had a spark caught 36 barrels of gunpowder that was hidden in the cellars beneath. Although the rest of the conspirators managed to flee London, they were one by one caught. Robert Catesby was shot dead, and the others, including Fawkes, were convicted and sentenced to be hanged, drawn and quartered in January 1606. They were taken from the Tower of London to Westminster Hall. But before the hangman could carry out his duty, Guy Fawkes fell from the scaffold tower that would have hanged him. He broke his neck and died instantly, some saying that he jumped to avoid the agony and further torture of being hanged. Incidentally, on a semantics note, did you know that the past tense of hang is hanged and not hung when relating to execution? Guy Fawkes was sentenced to hang. He would have been hanged, not hung. However, if you put the clothes on the washing line, you hung them. This only refers to that one specific event. These days, the religious backstory has mostly been lost, and children learn about Guy Fawkes wanting to blow up the Houses of Parliament, but not really why. The event is now a way to celebrate as the nights get darker, and the clocks will have just gone back by an hour to Greenwich Mean Time. The weather is getting wetter, windier and colder. Here comes winter. I'm just going to interject here and tell you what I'm doing. I'm taking away some of that pigment off the top of the trees because I want to relate some of the fireworks lighting on the very tops of those trees. So I need to take away just a little bit of that pigment. And the same can be said for painting and rendering this bushy area. Where the fire is, I'm going to need to leave a little whitish area of bare watercolour paper so that later on I can add some yellows or whites or oranges to that area to show that the lighting from the fire is lighting up that bush area. Bonfire night is the stepping stone to Christmas, but has begun to be overtaken by Halloween the week earlier. In the UK, you will still hear the pops and splutters and sometimes enormous booms of fireworks exploding all around. Let me have a quick moan here. I like to watch fireworks, but since having children, and specifically my own children, I have realised that I don't much like to hear them. People who have autism are often very sensitive to loud bangs, and this used to give us much consternation when the kids were little. Plus, animals hate it. My boy dog hates it. Horses and sheep and cows and outdoor dwelling animals hate it. I don't know, maybe even bees and ladybirds and spiders don't like loud explosions. But I'll tell you who else doesn't like it. People who have been in conflict situations. Since the UK opened its doors to people from Ukraine almost 2 years ago, I have become much more attuned to the fear of backfiring cars or doors slamming unexpectedly or fireworks. Here is my wish. Someone out there, please invent fireworks that light up the sky and look beautiful, but that are silent, or nearly silent. No bangs, no scaring people or animals or creatures. I thank you. Time to get the Inktense pencils out, and this is going to work really well for the fire. I'm just going to give that a little bit of colour and then go back in with a wet paintbrush. It just has clean water on it, and then drag up that colour so that it goes up into the sky as if it's fire. Now this is a bit of an experiment because I don't know, having put that black down for the sky, whether this is going to show through properly. Let's see what happens. This is a firework, and when I'm giving it the water, it still doesn't look as if it would have done had it have been straight onto white paper. So I'm going to use my jelly roll pen and put down some firework backgrounds first, and then see what happens when I put the pencil over the top of it. I've made sure that the jelly roll does dry properly, because otherwise it's just going to be a bit of a big old smeary mess. But I'll tell you what I do really like about this picture already, and that is the texture of the watercolour paint in the trees and the bushes and also in the sky. I think it's really pretty, and I don't really think it's got a huge amount to do with my talent of being a watercolour illustrator. I think it's more to do with how fabulous watercolour paint, pigment, and the paper is, and how well matched they are. Here we go with some stars, because it being a moonlit night, it has to be a starry night too. I tried it with a dry pencil, but that didn't work quite so well, so I've wetted the pencil a little bit in my clean water jar before adding that bit of pigment, and I am also going to go over it with a paintbrush too. Because the jelly roll pen has given the paper a little bit of a ridge, it does look a little bit strange to start with, but once I've gone over it with the pen, it's not too bad. In retrospect, what I might have done is perhaps put down some kind of masking fluid or something like that before I put the black down. Having taken some of that pigment away from the tops of the trees, now I can put down some of the relevant firework colour on the tops to show that there's a little bit of something, that light bouncing off the top. And then just making the fire, the smoke of this fire, just to give it a bit more atmosphere. a little bit of shadow around the stones and around the fox, and then I think that's it. I think we're all done. Okay, here's where I ask you to give the video a like and share it with somebody you like. Of course, if you hated the video, you can share it with someone you don't like. Up to you, free reign. Next week I will doubtlessly be drawing something else, but I've got some life events coming up, so I wait with bated breath to find out what it is I'll actually be doing. All will be revealed in the next instalment of... I will see you next week. Nano.